The Matric Class of 2023 has accomplished a historic first by obtaining the highest pass rate of 82.9% in South African history. In comparison to the 2022 results, this represents a noteworthy 2.8% improvement. Minister of Basic Education Angie Motskega commended the 2023 cohort for also attaining the greatest proportion of Bachelor passes and distinctions in NSC history. To discuss some of the contributing factors to the success, we're joined now by education expert Professor Metcalfe. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, a lot of work went into achieving this result. Talk to us about some of your reactions and observations as these results were announced.
Thank you, Mpho. Please call me Mary. Let's start off by saying, this is just a really wonderful year for all of the teachers, all of the learners, for the families, because when we have this level of success, it just is a recognition of all of the work that's been done. But there's some really interesting and significant shifts. I think that we first of all need to understand that a lot of educationists have been worried about the impacts of COVID because there was significant learning loss. This particular group was in grade 9 when we lost virtually the whole year of schooling. They went into grade 10 and it was alternate days of schooling. So there has been incredible effort, and I often feel quite moved by what that means in terms of the effort. So we need to thank them and acknowledge that. But the other significant shift for me is that what we're seeing is, in terms of the NEC results, a reduction in the range of inequality of results. In last year, the difference in the percentage pass between the highest performing provinces and the lowest performing provinces was a 20% percentage difference. This year, it's reduced all the way down to 13. Now, what that has been driven by is by really significant improvements in several provinces. Before I talk about those provinces, because I want to talk about that for a little while, it also has had the impact of the reduction in the inequality in the results and the improvement in significant provinces of some provinces just maintaining a stable, steady increase. And I sometimes worry that when we focus on a ranking of provinces, we might miss that point. So provinces such as the Free State and the Western Cape, Gauteng, they have continued to do well. They've done very well. They may have lost ranking, but they are stable and they've maintained their performance and they're continuing to improve. In Mpumalanga and Northwest, they've also improved significantly in the sense that in the case of Northwest, it's by more than 1%. But the provinces we all need to look at and understand better are the provinces that have improved hugely. Now, if you look at Eastern Cape, which is the one that interests me so much, they have improved by 4% in the number of learners who have succeeded, and nearly 3% in Bachelor passes. KwaZulu-Natal has continued its improvement. So now it's improved by 3.4% and 3.2% in Bachelor passes. And Limpopo has improved by 7.5%. Now, why am I so excited about KwaZulu-Natal, Limpopo, and Eastern Cape? Is because these are large rural provinces where, if you look at any poverty map distribution in the country, it is, in fact, KwaZulu-Natal, Limpopo, Eastern Cape, which are most affected by poverty. So something significant has happened in those three provinces, and I don't think anyone can tell us yet why.
How significant is it to highlight the impact of demographics as we take stock of those improvements in KZN, the Eastern Cape and Limpopo?
It's absolutely significant because learner performance in school internationally has been demonstrated endlessly to be linked to conditions of wealth and poverty at home and at school. The more resources you have at home and school to support learning, the better you do. This is not just a South African phenomenon. So you have domestic poverty, the poverty map shown of household income. You can do an overlay of the maps of household poverty by municipality over the old homelands, and you'll see a complete match. Also in schools, as much as government has tried to introduce policies which are very firmly pro-poor, the resources in schools differ in areas that are more poor than areas that are less poor, and it has a profound impact on performance.
As you talk about, you made mention of it, the temporary disruption caused by COVID-19, the group of matrics at the time were in grade 9, and gaps had to be filled in grades 10 and 11. Is it a show of the impact of these strategic measures implemented, really going a long way to show that those strategies were effective and can be further exacerbated or perhaps implemented to achieve an even greater rate in the future? I mean, Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi says that, in Gauteng, we could have achieved 90%.
Well, I think your question is really the key question, because you're saying if we have proof that interventions succeed, why do we not accelerate those interventions into the future to improve the matric results across? Now, firstly, I would like to see a much more rigorous approach rather than conjecture to what made the difference. Because otherwise, every year we cast around for reasons. We need to be able to say, this is what we want to test, and we are going to do a proper monitoring and proper evaluation to see if that makes a difference. And Martin Gustafsson, who's an excellent researcher, wrote a piece some time ago which said, we have explanations, but we don't test them. And then when things change, we just change the explanation. So first of all, let's rigorously test. The second thing I want to say is that in the technical background that the briefing that the DG of Basic Education gave, he did mention a range of interventions that were focused on the class of grade 12 class, the NSC class of 2013. And I want to argue that we should, of course, keep on encouraging the grade 12 learners, but we should have a proportionate intervention across the whole system. The level of intensity of supporting the matric is necessary because we have not yet got them to a point of readiness. And if we were to focus on the earlier grades with greater consistency, again, having an idea of what we're testing and seeing what works under what conditions, we would be able to distribute our resources over a more consistent improvement across all 12 years.
Professor, as we took a look at the outcome of the IEB matric exams, I mean, we heard Gauteng Education MEC Matume Chilwane saying that percentage is way too high. And, of course, perhaps the conversation around the NSC and IEB, I mean, writing the same paper should be one that comes to the forefront. But with that in mind, what sort of skills? I know resources are much higher in private schools, but are they tangible soft skills that can be exchanged between the two, as opposed to just wanting to jump onto writing the same paper? Of course, I mean, I spoke to a private school headmaster yesterday who was saying, well, there's got to be options, there's got to be choices to be made, and that idea is one that, well, for one, he will not entertain.
What I think is important about this debate is that I hope that Premier, the policy debate, because the broader policy debate must look at what legislation do we have, what policies do we have, why do we have them, and what needs to change. So to put pressure on the IEB schools as if to say, you shouldn't have a separate examining body is not the right place to start. We have the Genfetqua Act, which provides for the establishment of Umalosi, and it provides for different examining boards to exist. We have different examinations that are written that are run by different groups. DHET has its exams, Department of Higher Education and Training. The Independent Examining Board runs an examination, and we also have SAICA. They all have different purposes, and they are allowed in terms of the legislation. So if there is a public debate that results in the changing of policy, then maybe this is a good place to start. But I don't think that that's the biggest issue in education. We have Umalosi, which has the task of looking to see that these results are equivalent. To focus on now we should only have one exam, when in fact there are much more pressing issues which should be dominating the policy discussion in education, I think is unfortunate. We have a constitution which provides for both independent schools and public schools, and I think that all of our energy should go into doing everything we can to improve the quality of education and public schooling.
Yeah. Where does that leave the conversation around the learners who dropped out and never even made it to Matric? What happens to them? How does the system ensure that you keep them there and see them through to the end of the school calendar?
That is probably one of the most critical questions, and I'm glad that you've raised it. The quarterly labour force survey last year in 2023 gave us a figure of 3.7 million young people aged between 15 and 24 who are not employed, not in education, not in training. Where are they? Now, this is one of the biggest issues that we have to address in education. Education is compulsory up until the year in which you turn 15 or complete grade 9. After that, there's no compulsion to attend school. Young people who are not succeeding and cannot see the point of persisting and trying gradually become disengaged and leave. If they leave without any sense, firstly, of hope, of dignity, of having any piece of paper in their hand that they can take into the workplace, their alternatives before them are very bleak, and that should be a cause of huge concern in the country. We have in the DBE's new inclusive basket of assessment an explicit commitment to looking at throughput. And what the DBE now does when they publish the exam results is the exam results, the maths results, physical science, and they're trying to take their focus away from just looking at the single score into a wider set of indicators. One of the indicators is to look at throughput. And in the publication this year, they have shown that it is the Western Cape and Mpumalanga who have the highest levels of throughput. I can't work out exactly how they've analyzed that. Historically, KZN has also been high. But we need to be focusing on greater success for all learners up until the end of the period of compulsory education, the end of the general education period. We need to be vigilantly watching school attendance to see who is getting engaged and dropping out, and we need to be supporting learners who are at risk of dropping out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Thanks for weighing in on the discussion. Education expert Professor Mary Metcalfe giving us some reaction there to the outcome of how the Matric class of 2023 fared as those results were released yesterday.